We cross oceans in hours, send thoughts across the globe in milliseconds.
Oh, totally. I listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed, sometimes 2x if the speaker's a bit slow. I'm so guilty. I'm trying to optimize everything. But here's the catch, and it's a huge one. While everything around us hit the accelerator, our tech, our travel, our expectations, the source argues something inside us hasn't kept up. We're running software that just isn't compatible with our own hardware.
And that is the central tension we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into a text called Living Slowly in a Fast World. And I want to be clear right from the start. The mission here isn't just to complain about how busy we are. Everyone knows they're busy. We don't need a deep dive for that.
Right, we know we're tired.
The goal is to explore why. Why modern life feels so, I don't know, disjointed from our biological needs.
Oh, yeah.
Why does it feel like a friction burn? And maybe more importantly, what do we do about it without, moving to a yurt and throwing our phones away?
Which is good because I really like my smartphone. And I like mountains, but yeah, no yurt for me.
Yeah.
But I have to say, reading through this, usually I'm the energetic one, ready to go, but this material, it just struck me how relatable it is. It felt like someone had been spying on my morning routine and taking notes on my anxiety.
I think most people will feel that sense of recognition. It touches on this very specific condition of feeling like you're running a race you never actually signed up for, and you don't even know where the finish line is.
So let's get into it. The text starts with a pretty bold claim about our biology. It says the human nervous system was not designed for constant urgency. Now, just to play devil's advocate here, aren't we adaptable? I mean, we evolved from caves to skyscrapers. Why can't we adapt to speed?
That's a great question. And yes, we are adaptable, but the text argues there are fundamental limits. It says our system is designed for rhythm. That's the key word.
Rhythm, like music.
Think bigger. Think biological cycles. Effort and rest. Activity and stillness. Awake. Asleep. I mean, even your heartbeat, your breathing, it's all cyclical. It goes up, it comes down. Tension, release. But the argument here is that when life becomes permanently fast, that rhythm breaks. We stop cycling. We just sort of flatline.
Flatlining is usually a bad thing, though.
In a medical sense, yes. But here, think of it like an engine that's stuck at 7,000 RPM even when the car is parked. You're flatlining at max capacity. You aren't fluctuating between stress and recovery. You're just perpetually on.
That is actually a terrifying image, flatlining at max capacity.
It is. And the text argues this creates a deep biological mismatch. The world demands urgency. Respond now, decide now, move now. But our bodies are pleading for a pause to just reset the chemicals. When we don't get it, we burn out.
And I think that's why this hits home. You can feel that friction. It's not just having a lot to do. It's that your internal machinery is just grinding gears. So let's talk about what this actually looks like. The source describes these symptoms of what I would call a quiet rush.
Quiet rush is the perfect term for it.
Yeah.
It's not always running around screaming. It's internal. And the text gets really specific, starting with the morning routine.
Oh, this was the part where I felt completely seen. The text describes waking up and immediately thinking about tasks. You haven't even put your feet on the floor, but your brain is already 3 hours into the workday.
Exactly. And let's look at the mechanics of that. The source implies that when you do that, maybe you roll over and check your phone first thing, you are hijacking your body's natural cortisol response. You're basically injecting a stress chemical into your system before you've even had a glass of water.
So you're starting the day already in a threat state.
Precisely. There's no ramp up, no gentle boot sequence. You go from unconsciousness straight into a high alert problem solving. The source calls this moving from one responsibility to another without pause. A relentless momentum.
It's like a relay race where you're the only runner. You just keep passing the baton to yourself. But here's the part that really surprised me, and I want to get your take. The text talks about the illusion of rest.
This is a critical insight, especially for any high performers listening. We often think we're resting just because we aren't working, we're sitting on the sofa. But the source points out that even our rest is often filled with scrolling or background noise.
Oh, absolutely guilty. I mean, how many of us sit down to relax and watch a movie, but we're also scrolling through social media on our phones, the whole second screen thing?
Right. And the text makes this incredibly sharp distinction. The body may sit still, but the mind continues running. If you are processing information, even if it's just memes or news headlines, your brain is not resting. It is working.
That's the kicker. I always assumed that if I wasn't producing output, I was resting. But you're saying input is also work.
Oh, absolutely. Input requires processing. It requires sorting, judging, filing. So if the mind is running, you are not recovering. You aren't in that rest part of the rhythm. You're just doing a different kind of activity. And this prevents true recovery, which just feeds that feeling of being drained, even after a weekend off.
So the body's parked, but the engine is still revving because we keep feeding it data. And that leads us to the solution, or at least the shift in perspective, that the text proposes. And I love this because it really clarifies what living slowly actually means. I think when people hear that, they think they need to become a monk.
Right, we have this binary view. Either I'm a hyper-productive CEO or I'm a hermit making artisanal cheese in a cave.
Exactly. And I have no idea how to make cheese.
Fortunately, the source deals with this head-on. It says very clearly, living slowly is not about rejecting modern life. It's not about rejecting technology.
Thank goodness. So what is it then?
It's about moving through it differently.
Okay, that sounds nice, but it's a little abstract. How do I move through it differently if I'm not throwing away my phone?
The catalyst, according to the text, is one word: attention.
Attention.
Yes, slowness begins with attention. Think of it like a camera. If you shoot video at a standard frame rate, things move at normal speed. But if you shoot at a high frame rate, capturing more detail, more nuance, when you play it back, it looks like slow motion. You just see more.
That's a cool analogy. So by paying more attention, we're kind of increasing our frame rate on life.
In a way, yes. The text says that when we slow down enough just to notice our breath or our surroundings or even the tone of our own thoughts, something shifts. Immediately, it's like stepping out of the stream for just a second.
And the text has this beautiful phrase for what happens next. Time feels less aggressive.
I circle that too. Time feels less aggressive.
It's so powerful because time does feel aggressive when you're rushing. It feels like an enemy, like it's hunting you down. I only have 10 minutes left.
It feels like this diminishing resource you're fighting against. But the source argues that just by applying attention, by noticing the moment instead of fighting it, that aggression fades away. The text says moments feel more complete.
So it's not that you magically get more hours in the day, it's that the hours you have stop feeling like they're attacking you.
Correct. It changes the quality of the experience, not the quantity of the time.
Okay, let's get practical, because the text gives us 3 very specific examples of this. It talks about eating, walking, and conversation. And I think we should go deep on these because they're things we all do every day, usually on total autopilot.
Let's do it. They're perfect examples of the fast mode versus the slow mode.
First up, eating. In the fast world, the text calls this eating as interruption.
Which I think we've all done, the classic sad desk salad. You're typing with one hand, forking lettuce with the other. You're not tasting anything, you're just fueling the machine.
It's a hurdle, something to get over with so you can get back to work. I've definitely finished a sandwich and realized I don't even remember eating it.
Exactly. But the slow version is eating is nourishment. And that doesn't mean a 2-hour lunch at a fancy restaurant. It just means close the laptop, look at your food, actually taste the first bite.
It's just about being there for the meal.
It changes the act from a maintenance task into an experience, even if it only takes 15 minutes. It's a few minutes where you're present versus 15 where you're distracted.
I love that. Okay, number 2, walking. The fast version is walking is transportation.
Just getting from point A to point B. In our modern mindset, walking is almost seen as a failure of technology. We wish we could teleport, so we treat the walk as dead time. You're just trying to minimize it, checking your phone while you walk, mentally already at the meeting.
Versus the slow version, walking as observation.
Right. Noticing the environment, feeling your feet on the ground, noticing the air. You're still getting to point B. The outcome hasn't changed. You're not late, but you have completely changed the experience of getting there. In the fast version, the walk is an obstacle. In the slow version, it's a part of your life.
It's reclaiming that dead time and making it living time.
Exactly.
And the third one, which I think is maybe the most impactful for our relationships, is conversation.
This one is huge. The text contrasts conversation as exchange with conversation as connection.
Conversation as exchange. That sounds so efficient. Did you get the dry cleaning? Yes. Did you send the invoice? Yes.
It's transactional.
Right.
But it's deeper than that. In a fast conversation, you aren't really listening. You're reloading. You're just waiting for the other person to stop making noise so you can say your point. You're extracting data.
Oof, reloading. That hits hard. I've definitely been in meetings where I'm just waiting for my turn to talk.
We all have. Speed encourages transaction because transactions are efficient. But connection Connection is not efficient.
No, it's messy.
Connection requires a pause. It requires hearing the tone of voice, not just the data. It requires reading the room. The text argues that in the fast version, these things, eating, walking, talking, are just things to get through. But in the slow version, they become the life itself.
This brings us to a really deep point the source makes about time itself. It calls this the temporal trap.
This is the philosophical anchor of the whole argument, really. The source theorizes that constant rushing forces us to live in the future.
Because we're always thinking about what comes next.
Exactly. Think of it like a web browser. You know when you click a link and you're just watching the loading bar? You aren't reading the page, you're waiting for the page to load. When you rush, you treat the present moment like a loading bar for the future. You are physically here, but mentally you are 10 minutes or 10 hours down the road.
You're never actually on the website, you're just watching the spinner.
Precisely. And then the text drops this hammer of a line. The present is the only place where life actually happens.
That is a definitive statement.
It is. If you're always living in the future, you are, by definition, missing your life. You're missing the only reality that actually exists. Slowing down forces a return to the present. It stops the loading bar.
That is heavy. But I want to pivot back to reality for a second, because this all sounds great, being present, Zen, all that. But we live in a culture that rewards speed. The text acknowledges this. It says it takes actual courage to be unproductive.
It does. It's a countercultural act. The source explicitly mentions that we live in a culture that celebrates busyness.
No, absolutely. Think about it. If you tell someone, I was so busy this week, it's like a badge of honor. It implies, I'm important, I'm in demand.
Right. But if you say, I spent an hour just staring out the window drinking tea, people look at you like you're unemployed or lazy.
Are you okay? Do you need help?
Exactly. And the text acknowledges that choosing calm can feel uncomfortable because of this judgment. It may look unproductive from the outside. And that is a very real social hurdle to clear. We're wired to care about how we're perceived.
So how do we get over that? If I'm sitting there eating as nourishment while my colleagues are frantic, I feel like I'm failing. What's the payoff?
The payoff is internal. The text contrasts that external appearance of inactivity with the internal result.
Yeah.
It creates clarity.
Clarity.
Yes, and this links back to effectiveness. This is where we sell this to the high performers. The source argues that a slower pace allows for deeper thinking, and it makes a crucial distinction between two words, reacting and responding.
Okay, let's break that down. Reacting versus responding. What's the difference?
Reacting quickly is the fast mode. An email comes in, a crisis, a notification, and you snap back immediately. It's a reflex. It's often shallow or emotional. You're playing whack-a-mole.
It's that knee-jerk thing. Send the email, regret it 5 minutes later.
Exactly. Responding thoughtfully, the slow mode, requires a gap. It requires that split second of attention we talked about. You take in the information, you process it, and you choose a response. The text implies this leads to far better outcomes. You solve the real problem once, correctly.
So by slowing down, you're actually becoming more effective. You're reducing unnecessary stress. You're increasing awareness. You're not just flailing around faster than everyone else.
Precisely. You're trading speed for accuracy and insight.
And this leads right into the final major theme, which I think is crucial for our listeners who are ambitious. The idea of ambition itself.
Yeah, because I can hear the skeptics now. They're thinking, if I slow down, I'm going to get left behind. My competitors are rushing. They've already eaten my lunch.
Slow guys finish last, right?
That is the fear. But the source challenges that whole idea. It states very clearly, living slowly does not mean avoiding ambition.
So we can still be ambitious. We don't have to give up on our goal.
Absolutely not. The text says it means aligning ambition with well-being.
Aligning ambition with well-being. Okay, that sounds like balance, but is it more than that?
It's strategy. Think about a sprinter versus a marathon runner. If you sprint the first mile of a marathon at full speed, you look like you're winning. You're leaving everyone in the dust. And what happens at mile 5?
You crash. You're on the side of the road. Done.
And the person who paced themselves just jogs right by you. The text offers this insight. Long-term progress requires sustainability. You cannot burn out and still progress.
That's the key right there, sustainability.
The argument is that the fast mode is short-sighted. It prioritizes immediate speed over long-term viability. So the source isn't saying, don't be ambitious. It's saying, be ambitious enough to last.
I really like that framing, be ambitious enough to last. It's not about being lazy. It's about being smart with your energy. It's an elite performance strategy.
It is. It's recognizing you're a biological system, not a computer. And treating yourself like a machine is actually the least efficient way to operate a human.
So we've covered the biological mismatch, the illusion of rest, the practical shifts, the strategic value of slowness. Let's wrap this up. What is the synthesis here, the main takeaway?
The main takeaway is that slowness isn't really about time management. We tend to think, I need to clear my schedule to be slow. But the text says, in the end, slowness is not about time. It is about the quality of attention.
It's not about the clock, it's about the mind.
It's about where you direct your consciousness. You can be in a busy meeting, chaos all around, but if you are fully present, breathing, listening, you are living slowly. You can be on a beach with a totally free schedule, but if you're frantically refreshing your email, you are living fast.
That is such a liberating distinction. It means we don't have to wait for vacation to access this. It's available right now.
It is. The source closes with the idea that attention is where life becomes meaningful. That meaning doesn't come from the speed of the events, but from the depth of our engagement with them.
It's about being there for your own life, not just rushing to the end of it.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. I definitely need to rethink my sad desk salad habit. But before we go, we always like to leave our listener with a specific thought to mull over.
Yes. We talked about the courage to look unproductive, that social pressure is very real. The text says that choosing calm creates clarity inside, even if it looks like you're doing nothing on the outside.
So here is the question for you to carry with you today. Where in your own life are you currently sacrificing clarity just to appear busy to the outside world? Are you typing that email or attending that meeting or rushing through dinner just to prove that you are active? And what would happen? What clarity might you find if you had the courage to stop just for a moment and let the loading bar finish?
Something to think about.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time. So I want to start with something that happened to me just this morning.
Okay.
It's this tiny moment, almost insignificant, but it's really been nagging at me. I was just waiting for the elevator. We're talking, maybe 30, 40 seconds. And in that tiny little window, I felt this, a literal physical itch.
Oh, yeah.
My hand just drifted into my pocket, pulled out my phone, unlocked it, swiped through a couple of apps, found nothing, and put it back.
A phantom check. It's basically a reflex for us now.
Exactly. It wasn't a conscious choice. I didn't need to see anything. But what really hit me was when I looked up, there were 3 other people in that lobby, and every single one of them was doing the exact same thing. Heads down, that blue light on their faces. It felt like we were all terrified of just standing there.
It's interesting you use that word terrified, because the analysis we're looking at today suggests it's not really an exaggeration.
Right.
We aren't just bored anymore. We are maybe becoming incapable of facing a moment without some kind of input.
And that's what we're diving into today. This isn't just another, put down your phone lecture.
Yeah.
We're looking at this fascinating breakdown called How Modern Life Changed the Way We Think. And its premise is so much heavier than just being distracted. It's arguing that the structure of our lives is, fundamentally rewiring the biology of our brains.
Right. So the mission here isn't to shame anyone for scrolling or checking email. It's to actually unpack how the brain adapts to its environment. We need to understand why we get this illusion of productivity while our attention spans kind of shatter, and more importantly, how we might reclaim some control over our own minds.
So let's get into the mechanics of it. The analysis starts by zooming way, way out.
Yep.
It wants us to look at the texture of time.
Yeah, historically versus now. It creates this really stark contrast between what it calls the slow information era and our current fast information reality.
And it's not just about the technology itself.
No, it's about the latency of communication.
Latency is a great word for it. The text points out how, for pretty much all of human history, information traveled at the speed of, a horse or a ship.
You send a letter, and it takes weeks to get a reply.
Right.
And just think about the psychological impact of that delay. You send a thought out into the world, and then, nothing.
Just a gap.
A massive expanse of time where you're just waiting.
To us, that sounds like torture. The whole argument here is that the gap actually served a purpose, right?
Absolutely. That silence, it wasn't empty. It was processing time. It was a period where the brain could, digest information, form complex thoughts, and just rest.
And conversations were the same way.
Totally. They were face-to-face, they were dense, and they usually happened in these dedicated blocks of time. You weren't having 50 fragmented conversations at once.
Which brings us to now, the after. I mean, I don't think we need to explain what this feels like, but the analysis calls our information now constant.
It's the complete elimination of latency. News doesn't update once a day, it's every single minute. Messages demand an immediate reply.
There is no gap anymore. There's a line in the reading that really just stuck with me. Notifications interrupt even quiet moments.
It's invasive.
It really is. It's like we've allowed the whole world to just walk into our living room at 10 o'clock at night and start shouting at us.
And that is the key pivot in this whole deep dive. It's not just that the phone is noisy. It's that because the interruption is constant, the brain never actually powers down.
We're in a state of perpetual alertness.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where the science comes in. We hear this term neuroplasticity thrown around all the time, usually as this great thing, like, oh, you can learn French at 40.
Sure.
But this analysis says neuroplasticity is a double-edged sword.
It is. I mean, neuroplasticity just means the brain is malleable. It changes based on what you do with it. The brain is, above all, an efficiency engine.
So it wants to get really, really good at whatever it does most often. So if I'm spending 10 hours a day rapidly switching between Slack, Instagram, email, the news,
then your brain physically rewires itself to become an expert at rapid switching. It myelinates those pathways. It literally optimizes for distraction.
Wait, hold on. So when I feel like I can't focus on a book, it's not just that I'm tired or lazy.
No.
It's that I've literally trained my brain to be bad at it.
You've trained for the sprint, so the marathon feels impossible. The analysis makes the point that the brain starts to expect stimulation.
It sets a new baseline.
A new baseline for anxiety, for arousal. If that input stops, your brain goes, hey, wait, something's wrong here. Where's the dopamine? Where's the noise?
That explains the elevator. My brain hit a quiet patch and it panicked.
That's the withdrawal. The text actually identifies 3 specific symptoms of this adaptation, and they're fascinating. The first one is that silence feels unusual.
Which is just tragic, isn't it? Silence used to be the default setting for the universe. Now it feels like a glitch in the system.
And tied right into that is the second symptom. Waiting feels uncomfortable. We've lost our tolerance for the space between, desire and satisfaction.
Oh, totally. If you have a question, you Google it instantly. If you want entertainment, you stream it.
The neural muscle for just waiting has atrophied.
And the third one, and this is the one that honestly scares me the most, is the difficulty with long reading or deep reflection. I've noticed this so much in myself. I'll sit down to read a novel, and like 5 pages in, I feel this friction. My brain is physically resisting how slow it is.
That friction is real.
Yeah.
Because deep reading requires sustained, linear attention, a single stream of thought.
But my brain isn't built for that anymore.
No, your modern brain is built for what the text calls fragmented attention, monitoring multiple streams at once. Asking a brain wired for TikTok to read Tolstoy is like asking a juggler to suddenly start meditating while keeping all the balls in the air.
Yeah, so we have this fragmented attention. But here's the thing, and I think a lot of people listening will relate to this. I often feel incredibly productive when I'm in that mode. I'm answering emails, I'm on top of the news, clearing notifications. I feel like a wizard.
That is what the analysis calls the illusion of productivity. And it is a trap.
But why is it an illusion? I mean, I am getting things done, aren't I?
You're getting tasks done, you're processing data, but you aren't doing deep work. The text makes this crucial distinction between processing quickly and understanding deeply. When you're flitting between tabs, you're skimming the surface of 1,000 ideas, but you aren't actually penetrating any of them.
So it's the difference between jet skiing across the ocean and scuba diving.
That's a perfect analogy.
You cover a lot of miles on the jet ski, but you don't see the reef.
And the brain rewards the jet ski. Every time you clear an email or check a notification, you get that tiny little hit of dopamine. You feel busy, you feel effective. But the analysis argues that this constant movement actually weakens your ability to think slowly.
Thinking slowly? It sounds like an insult, but in this context, it's the goal.
It's the ultimate goal. Slow thinking is where synthesis happens. It's where you connect 2 totally unrelated ideas to form a new one. It's where wisdom lives.
Then fast thinking.
Fast thinking is just reaction.
So if we've lost this ability, or at least if we're suppressing it, what are we actually missing out on? The analysis gives us a whole list of ingredients for deep thinking.
Yeah, and looking at this list is almost painful because you realize how rare these states have become. The first one is obvious: time without interruption.
Which is basically a luxury good now. If you have 4 hours of uninterrupted time, you're either a monk or you're unemployed.
Or you're incredibly disciplined.
Yeah.
But the second ingredient is the one that really challenges people.
Which is? Boredom.
Boredom. We spend billions of dollars on technology specifically to murder boredom. You're saying we actually need it.
We desperately need it. The analysis frames boredom not as a lack of things to do, but as the incubation period for ideas.
When you're bored, your brain's default mode network kicks in. Your mind wanders. It starts digging through old memories, random facts, future plans, and it starts knitting them all together.
And if we plug that hole with a podcast or a game every single time we feel bored,
then the knitting never happens. You kill the creative process before it can even start.
That puts a whole new spin on waiting in line at the grocery store. I'm not wasting time, I'm incubating.
You are, or you could be, if you didn't check Twitter.
The other ingredients it mentioned were uncertainty and patience. No, I get patience, but why uncertainty?
Because deep thinking means grappling with something you don't understand yet. You have to be willing to sit in the fog.
To not know the answer.
To be okay with not knowing the answer for an hour or a day or a week.
But the internet hates uncertainty. The internet is an answer machine.
Exactly. Modern systems reward speed and reaction. If you don't know the answer in 5 seconds, you just look it up. We've outsourced the struggle. And by outsourcing the struggle, we've outsourced the learning.
So we have access to information, but we aren't internalizing it.
We aren't.
It feels a little systemic, doesn't it? Like the whole world is designed to stop us from thinking deeply. So I guess the question is this just how it is now? Are we doomed to be shallow thinkers because the algorithm won?
It's so easy to fall into that cynicism, but the analysis is actually quite balanced on this. It doesn't advocate for, smashing your smartphone and moving to a cabin in the woods.
Which is a relief, because I really like Google Maps.
Right. It acknowledges the extraordinary possibilities of our time. We can connect with people globally. We have access to the sum of human knowledge.
The creative tools are unbelievable.
They look like magic to someone from 50 years ago. The point isn't that technology is bad.
So what is the point then?
The point is that the default setting of technology is bad for deep thinking. The challenge, as the text puts it, is balance. It basically outlines two diverging paths for us.
Okay, path one is the path of least resistance.
Path one is letting technology shape our attention completely. We become purely reactive. We let the algorithms decide what we look at and when we look at it.
If we do that,
we lose our depth. We become really efficient processors of other people's content, but we don't create anything of our own.
And path two?
Path two is using technology consciously. It's treating your attention like a finite, valuable resource that you actually have to defend.
Defending your attention, I like that. But let's get practical. Because be conscious is great advice, but it's hard to do when your pocket is vibrating. The analysis gives some specific, actionable steps.
And what I like about them is that they're small. They're about resistance training for your brain. The first one is classic advice: turn off notifications.
Everyone says this, but
Yeah.
based on what we've been talking about, this isn't just about peace and quiet, is it?
Not at all. It's about sovereignty. When you leave notifications on, you're giving every app developer in Silicon Valley permission to interrupt your train of thought whenever they want.
And turning them off is taking that back.
You're reclaiming the right to decide when you engage. You're shifting from push to pull.
I pull information when I'm ready. It doesn't push itself onto me.
Exactly. The next step it suggests is reading longer texts.
Which goes right back to that neuroplasticity argument.
It's basically physical therapy for your attention span. You have to force your brain to stay on one linear path for 30 minutes or an hour. It will feel uncomfortable at first. You'll feel that itch.
But you're remyelinating the pathways for focus.
You are. The text also suggests allowing time without input.
This is the anti-podcast rule.
It is. Can you wash the dishes without listening to an audiobook? Can you walk the dog without headphones? It sounds trivial, but those are the only moments your brain gets to do that knitting we talked about.
If you fill every second with input, there's zero room for output.
None. And finally, and this circles right back to where we started, sitting quietly without reaching for a device.
The elevator practice.
The elevator practice, just stand there, look at the wall, notice your breathing, feel that itch to check your phone, and just don't scratch it. Prove to your own brain that the world won't end if you disconnect for 2 minutes.
So if we actually do this, and that's a big if because the addiction is real, what's the payoff? Because let's be honest, scrolling is fun. Why should I trade that for staring at a wall?
The analysis promises a really specific outcome. It says that with sustained attention, the mind begins to slow down.
And again, that's slow in the good sense.
Yes, slow as in deliberate, calm. The text says ideas connect more naturally. Instead of your thoughts crashing into each other like bumper cars, they start to flow.
You regain the ability to follow a thought all the way to its conclusion.
You do. And it mentions that thoughts feel less chaotic. I think that's what everyone is desperate for right now. We all feel like our heads are just full of bees.
We do, and that mental chaos is a direct result of the fragmented environment. So when you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your peace. There's this really powerful reframing at the end of the analysis. It moves the whole conversation away from productivity and focus and turns it into something much more personal.
This is my favorite part of the whole piece.
Yeah.
It says, our attention is one of our most valuable resources. Which, I mean, it's true. It's the only thing you truly own.
And then it says, protecting it is an act of self-respect.
That line stopped me in my tracks. An act of self-respect.
It just changes the stakes, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
not about being a better worker or a smarter reader.
No.
It's about respecting yourself enough not to sell your consciousness to the highest bidder for cheap engagement.
Exactly. Every time you resist the clickbait, every time you sit in silence, you're saying, my mind is worth more than this. You're choosing your own life over the simulation of life that's happening on the screen.
That is a hell of a takeaway. We've covered a lot of ground here, from the slow pace of historical letters to the rewiring of our neurons, the trap of feeling busy, and now this idea of attention as dignity.
It really highlights that this isn't a technology problem, it's a human problem. Technology is just the current environment. The real question is how we choose to adapt to it.
So as we wrap up, I'm left thinking about that building metaphor we touched on.
And that leads to the final thought I want to leave with you. We know the brain adapts. It is constantly physically constructing itself based on input.
So every minute is another brick.
Every minute is another brick. So I want you to look back at the last hour of your life, or maybe the last day. If your brain is physically shaping itself based on how you spent that time, what kind of brain are you building?
That is terrifying.
It can be. Did you build a brain designed for depth and patience and connection? Or did you build one for fragmentation, anxiety, and reaction?
And the scary part is the brain doesn't judge. It just builds whatever you give it.
Exactly. But the empowering part is that the next hour is a new set of blueprints.
Yeah.
You can start building something different right now.
What kind of brain are you building? I'm going to be thinking about that every single time I reach for my pocket. Thank you all for listening to this deep dive. Hopefully we've given you something to chew on during your next moment of silence.
Just don't Google the answer. Sit with it.
We'll see you next time. I want you to picture a scenario that I guarantee this happens to you at least once a day. You're waiting for something,
Oh, yeah?
right? Maybe the microwave is counting down those last, 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Or maybe you're in an elevator and the door's just closed. Or you're just the second person in line at the coffee shop. It's this tiny pocket of time, just empty space. What is the absolute first thing your brain screams at you to do?
Check the phone.
Yeah.
Immediately. Oh, it's not even a conscious decision anymore.
Right.
It's a reflex. Hand goes to pocket, screen lights up, scroll, scroll, scroll.
Yeah. It really feels like we're allergic to the quiet.
We really are. It's become this sort of survival instinct, or at least it feels like one to the brain. We treat those empty moments like a vacuum that needs to be filled before we completely implode.
Exactly. We treat silence like a bug in the operating system.
Yeah, a glitch.
Right, a glitch. But today we're doing a deep dive into a piece of writing simply titled, Why Silence and Boredom Are Important. And the core argument here is that this bug we're trying to fix, that empty, boring space, is actually the most critical feature of the human mind.
It's a fascinating read.
Yeah.
Because it completely flips the script on how we view productivity. I mean, we usually think of doing nothing as just wasted time.
Yeah, time you could have spent doing literally anything else.
Exactly. But this source argues that doing nothing is actually a very specific, active, biological process. It's not an absence of activity. It's a shift in the type of activity.
Right, and that's what we want to unpack today. Because on the surface, you hear the title, and it sounds like standard digital detox advice.
Oh, totally. Put down the phone, go touch grass, be happy.
Right, exactly.
Uh.
But the source goes much deeper into the actual mechanics of what happens to the brain when we stop feeding it information.
It asks a really big question. If we stop distracting ourselves, what actually happens in that space? Like, is it just empty? Or is there something there that we're actively suppressing?
So let's start with the why. Why are we so terrified of this in the first place? Because the source opens with a pretty heavy observation about our relationship with silence. It says we fundamentally misunderstand it.
We really do. The text points out that most people associate silence with loneliness or emptiness.
Right.
And I think that's a crucial distinction right off the bat. If you view silence as emptiness, then your natural instinct is to fill it.
Because it's a void.
Exactly. It feels like a loss. Something is missing.
I'll be honest, I feel that. Like if I'm sitting alone in a room and it's dead quiet, I don't feel peaceful immediately.
Right.
I feel exposed. Like if there's no noise, I'm stuck with my own thoughts. And my thoughts aren't always the most chill roommates, you know?
That is exactly what the source addresses. It says we confuse the container with the contents.
Okay, wait, unpack that.
So we think the silence itself is the loneliness. We blame the quiet. But the source reframes this entirely. It actually calls silence deeply nourishing.
Deeply nourishing.
Yeah.
Which is a really weird word for quiet.
It is, yeah. But think about it biologically. If you are constantly eating junk food, sugar, carbs, empty calories, you never actually feel real hunger.
Right.
But you also never feel truly sustained.
Mm-hmm.
You just feel that constant spike and crash.
So you're just constantly grazing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The source argues that constant noise, so podcasts, music, the news, social media, that is the junk food.
Okay, so then silence is the kale salad.
Basically, yes.
Yep.
Silence is the nutrient. It's the protein. The text suggests that our brains are actually hungry for silence, but because that hunger feels like a pang, it feels like a gap, we panic.
And we stuff it with more noise.
Exactly. We're mistaking the cure for the problem.
Okay, so let's say I buy that. Let's say I decide to go on this silence diet. I put the phone in the other room, I turn off the TV, and I just sit there on the couch.
Okay.
What happens next? Because the source lays out a very specific sequence of events, and it doesn't sound like it happens instantly.
No, it doesn't. And this is exactly where most people bail out. The very first phase the text describes is settling. It says, and I quote here, "In silence, the mind begins to settle."
Which implies there was chaos before.
Exactly. The analogy I always think of, and the text kind of alludes to this, is a jar of river water.
Okay.
If you scoop up water from a rushing river, it's cloudy. It's full of mud and silt just swirling around. That is your brain on constant stimulation. You can't see through it at all.
And if you keep shaking the jar, which is basically what we do when we switch between apps or multitask, it stays cloudy.
Right. It never clears. So settling means putting the jar down on the table and refusing to touch it. Physically, this means removing the input.
Okay.
If you do that, gravity just takes over. The silt slowly drops to the bottom, the water becomes clear, and the source says this leads to the second phase, which is that thoughts become clearer.
Okay, but here's where I get a little skeptical. Clarity sounds really nice on paper, but sometimes the mud in my head is stuff I don't really want to see clearly.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? I keep the water moving on purpose so I don't have to look at the sediment at the bottom of the jar.
You hit the nail on the head. That is the resistance. And the source doesn't shy away from this at all. It says the next thing that happens after clarity is that emotions rise gently to the surface.
Yeah, see, that's the part that scares people.
Mm.
Emotions rising.
But notice the word gently.
Gently.
The text is very specific here.
Yeah.
It argues that when we are constantly distracted, we are keeping those emotions under high pressure. We're suppressing them.
Right.
And when you suppress something, it tends to explode when it finally gets out. But silence acts like a release valve.
Oh, okay. So it's the difference between a geyser exploding and just a slow leak.
Precisely. The source says we start to notice what we truly feel. It's basically data collection.
How so?
Well, when you're distracted, you might feel this vague sense of anxiety or irritability, but you don't know why. You're just reacting to the noise.
Yeah, you're just snapping at people.
Right. But when you settle, you can actually identify the source. You realize, oh, I'm not just tired.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually really sad about that conversation I had with my boss yesterday.
That makes a lot of sense. So silence isn't just about resting, it's almost like a diagnostic tool. It's the only way to read the error logs in your own brain.
That's a perfect way to put it. You can't debug the code while the program is running at maximum CPU usage. You have to pause it.
Okay, so that's silence. That's sort of the passive side of the coin. But then the source pivots to something that feels a lot more active and honestly a lot more annoying.
Boredom.
Boredom, the enemy of the modern world.
Seriously, I mean, we have entire multi-billion-dollar industries designed specifically to kill boredom.
Right. But the text claims that boredom works similarly to silence, just with a different engine. It says, when we are bored, the brain searches for meaning.
This is a critical pivot in this deep dive, because silence is about clearing. but boredom is about hunting. Yeah. The text argues that boredom is not a passive state of nothing happening. It is a high alert state. The brain realizes there is no external input coming in, so it decides it has to generate its own.
Generate its own meaning. That sounds a little abstract. What does that actually look like in practice?
The source breaks it down into what we can call the creative triad. It says when the brain is truly bored, it begins to do three very specific things. It creates, it reflects, and it imagines.
Okay, let's break those down. Because usually when I'm bored, I don't feel creative at all. I just feel, well, bored. I feel dull.
You feel dull because you're likely still in the withdrawal phase, which we'll definitely get to. But let's look at the triad first.
Okay.
First is reflect. It's looking backward. The brain starts processing the backlog of memories and experiences that you just haven't had time to file away yet.
Oh, like when you're in the shower and suddenly you replay a conversation from 3 years ago and realize exactly what you should have said.
Yes, exactly that. That's the reflection engine kicking in because your visual cortex isn't fully occupied by a screen.
Right?
And then you have imagine. This is projecting forward, simulating different futures, planning, dreaming.
And finally, create.
Right. Create is the synthesis of the two. You take the data from the past, the reflection, and you combine it with the possibilities of the future, the imagination, and you make something totally new.
Wow.
And the source argues that this triad only activates when the external input cuts off.
So if I'm listening to a podcast, watching the news, and texting a friend all at the same time,
The triad is completely offline. Think about it. Why would your brain burn all that precious energy creating its own entertainment when you are spoon-feeding it high-quality entertainment for free?
it's basic economics. Why cook a complex meal from scratch when Uber Eats is already at the door?
Precisely. The brain is an efficiency machine, first and foremost. If you give it meaning, even cheap fast food meaning like a 30-second cat video, it will take it and stop searching.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the real villain of the text, if we can call it that.
Constant entertainment.
Right. The source is very stark about this. It doesn't say entertainment itself is bad.
Sure.
It says constant entertainment removes the process. It completely short-circuits that creative loop.
You know, it says, without boredom, creativity becomes weaker. That specific phrasing really stuck with me. Weaker. It treats creativity like a muscle, not a personality trait.
That's a massive distinction, isn't it? We tend to think some people are just born creative types and others aren't.
Yeah, like it's genetic.
Exactly. But this source suggests that creativity is actually an adaptive response to an environment. If you are in a bored environment, your brain adapts by becoming creative.
Survive the boredom.
Right. And if you are never bored, that muscle just atrophies.
So we aren't just losing time when we scroll through our feeds. We're losing capacity. We're actually training our brains to be full-time consumers rather than creators.
We are essentially outsourcing our imagination. Think about kids. This is the absolute classic example.
Okay.
If a kid is bored and you don't give them a tablet, what happens?
It's miserable for about 10 minutes.
Right? They whine. They lay on the floor and say they're dying.
And then suddenly they're in the other room building a massive fortress out of cardboard boxes, and they're the commander of Starship.
Exactly. The boredom was the threshold they had to cross to get to the creativity. If you had handed them the tablet at minute 1,
The Starship never happens.
the Starship never happens. The source is arguing that as adults, we are constantly handing ourselves the tablet. We never let ourselves get to the Starship phase anymore.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Adults have stress. We have jobs, we have mortgages and bills. Sometimes I just don't want to build a starship. I just want to turn my brain off for an hour. Is there no room for that? Is the source really saying we have to be on all the time, even in our downtime?
That's a very valid pushback.
Yeah.
But I think the source would argue that consuming content isn't actually turning your brain off.
It's not.
No. It's keeping the brain in a state of passive reception. You are still processing massive amounts of data, colors, sounds, narratives. You're just not controlling it. True turning off is the silence. That's the settling phase we talked about.
So the scrolling is actually more work for the brain than the silence, even though the silence feels so much harder to do.
It's a different kind of load. It's cognitive load versus emotional load.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that silence feels harder. And that is really the crux of the problem here.
Yeah.
The source explicitly validates this struggle. It says, allowing small moments without stimulation can feel uncomfortable at first.
Uncomfortable is putting it mildly. It's an itch. It's almost physical for me. I literally feel it in my hands. I need to do something with them.
That itch is completely real. It's dopamine withdrawal. Your brain is used to a very specific high baseline of stimulation. When you drop below that baseline, the brain sends out a distress signal and saying, hey, where are the hits? Where's the light? Where's the noise?
It feels like I'm wasting time. That's the biggest hurdle for me personally. If I'm just sitting there, I feel deeply unproductive.
And that is the cultural conditioning speaking. We equate stillness with laziness. But the source reframes this beautifully. It calls these moments growth spaces.
Growth spaces.
It says silence and boredom are not problems to solve. They are spaces where growth happens quietly.
I really like that. It completely reframes the discomfort. It's like the burn you feel when you're lifting weights at the gym.
Yes.
You don't stop and say, oh no, my muscles are burning, something is terribly wrong. You say, good. That means it's working. I'm growing.
Exactly. The discomfort is the evidence that you are crossing the barrier. And the text promises that this discomfort is temporary. It says over time they become peaceful.
Over time. So we're talking about actual training here.
Yes. You have to actively build up your boredom tolerance. You start with 5 minutes. Just sit there. Then maybe you push it to 10. Eventually, the brain realizes, oh, wait, we aren't dying. We're just being. And that's when the settling happens. That's when the creativity kicks in.
But there's a payoff here that goes way beyond just having good ideas or being creative. And this is where the source gets really philosophical at the end. We aren't just doing this to be more productive at work or to write the next great American novel.
No. The ultimate destination of this deep dive isn't output at all. It's connection.
Yeah. The source ends with a line that honestly stopped me in my tracks when I read it. It says, in silence, we meet ourselves.
In silence, we meet ourselves. It's a haunting phrase, really.
It implies that in the noise, we are actively missing ourselves. Like we're two ships passing in the night, but one of the ships is me, and the other one is also me.
It implies that the self isn't just something you carry around on the surface all day. It's something that lives deep in the quiet. If you never go to the quiet, you never actually visit that part of yourself.
It goes right back to that idea of the emotions rising gently. If I'm always distracted, I'm technically present in the room physically, but I'm not home. I'm not inhabiting my own internal state.
And think about the profound cost of that. If you never meet yourself, you never really know what you want out of life. You never know what's actually bothering you in your relationships.
You just know you're stressed all the time.
You just know you're tired. You literally become a stranger to your own operating system.
That's terrifying. It makes the stakes of this whole topic so much higher. It's not just put down the phone so you can focus better. It's put down the phone so you don't lose track of who you are as a person.
It completely changes the definition of wasted time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe the wasted time isn't the 5 minutes you spent just staring at the wall. Maybe the real wasted time was the 5 hours you spent watching other people live their lives on a screen while completely ignoring your own.
Wow. Okay. That's heavy. But it's a really necessary reframe. So let's try to synthesize all of this. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We really have. We started with a fundamental misunderstanding that silence is empty and lonely, when in reality, it's deeply nourishing. It's the meal our brains are actually starving for.
Right. And then we talked about the mechanics of settling, how the muddy jar of river water needs to sit perfectly still to become clear.
Exactly.
And how that clarity allows those suppressed emotions to rise gently to the surface so we can actually process them instead of just reacting to them.
Then we look at the active side, the creative triad of boredom. How the brain, when deprived of external meaning, kicks into high gear to reflect, imagine, and create.
The starship.
The starship. It's a survival mechanism that we are systematically dismantling with constant entertainment.
And finally, we acknowledge the cost. The discomfort is real. Dopamine withdrawal is hard. But if we can push through that friction, that itch, we get to the peaceful side. And on that side, we get to meet ourselves.
It's such a simple argument at its core, but it requires a massive behavioral shift. It requires consistently choosing the hard nothing over the easy something.
So we want to leave you with something practical to try, because it is so easy to listen to a deep dive like this, nod along, think, wow, that's profound, and then immediately open Instagram the second this audio ends.
Which is exactly what the dopamine centers in your brain are already planning to do, by the way.
Right. They're queuing it up. So here's the challenge, directly based on the source material. We aren't asking you to throw your smartphone in the ocean.
No. Start small. The very next time you feel that itch, the next time you are standing in line or waiting for the kettle to boil or even just sitting on the toilet, let's be real, that's a big one.
It is the sacred scrolling time.
When you feel the overwhelming urge to fill that tiny gap, don't. Just for 1 minute, Keep the phone in your pocket. Keep the TV off.
Feel the discomfort. Just acknowledge it. Say to yourself, okay, I'm bored. My brain is itching for input. And just watch what happens next.
See if you can get to that settling phase. See if a thought bubbles up that isn't about what you're seeing on a screen.
Treat it as a micro-meeting. You're scheduling a 1-minute check-in with yourself because, frankly, you're probably the most interesting person you know, so you should really hear what you have to say. What version of yourself will you actually meet if you just give them a second to speak?
I couldn't agree more.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We hope you find some quiet out there.
Take care.
See you next time.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I want to start today by talking about, well, I call it the Wednesday feeling. You know the one.
Oh, yeah. I definitely know the one.
Right, so it's not the dread of Monday,
That's
and it's definitely not the relief of Friday. It's the middle, the flat part.
The plateau.
Exactly. You wake up, you do the commute, you answer the emails, you make the dinner, you go to sleep. And if you stop and think about it too hard, you might get this nagging anxiety that you're just spinning your wheels.
Like nothing quote-unquote meaningful is actually happening.
Right. We tend to view those days as just filler.
We treat them like the filler episodes of our lives. We're just waiting for the season finale, you know, the vacation, the promotion, the wedding, the big event.
We really do measure our lives in peaks.
Yeah.
I mean, if I ask you right now, hey, how was your year? You're going to tell me about the trip to Japan or buying a new house.
I'm certainly not going to tell you about the 200 breakfasts I ate standing over the kitchen sink.
Exactly. But today, we're looking at a text titled, Finding Meaning in Ordinary Days. And it's basically telling us that our entire accounting system for a good life is just, it's wrong.
It is a bit of a slap in the face to modern culture, honestly. We live in an attention economy that screams that everything has to be extraordinary.
Or viral.
Right, viral or life-changing to even matter. But this source argues the exact opposite. It suggests that meaning isn't found in the outliers or the spikes in the graph. It's found in the flat lines.
In the routine.
In the routine, exactly.
Which, to be fair, that sounds a little bit like a coping mechanism. You know, like, oh, your life isn't exciting. Don't worry. Boring is actually better. It feels like something you tell yourself when you've just given up on the dream.
I think that's a completely fair skepticism. It is very easy to dismiss this as toxic positivity or just settling for less.
Right.
But the text actually digs into the mechanics of why we feel unfulfilled even when we hit those peaks. It argues that by constantly scanning the horizon for the next big thing, we develop a sort of blindness to the ground beneath our feet.
It calls this the quiet beauty of daily life. Right.
Yes, and it frames it almost as a resource we are actively squandering.
Okay, so let's test that. Because if we stop chasing the dopamine hit of the big event, what are we actually left with? If I strip away the goals and the milestones, I'm just left with chores and a commute.
Well, the source breaks this down into what it calls an anatomy of the ordinary. And it gives us 3 specific anchors to look at to help explain this.
Let's use them.
A quiet breakfast,
Yeah.
a short walk, and a kind conversation.
Okay, let's go through these. Because on paper, these sound incredibly mundane. Let's take the first one. A quiet breakfast. I mean, most people I know, myself included, don't really have breakfast in the traditional sense.
We inhale calories.
We inhale calories while checking Slack or scrolling through the news.
And that's exactly the distinction the text makes. It's not just about the act of eating. It's about the quiet part.
Yeah.
Think about the last time you ate a meal without a screen in front of you, without listening to a podcast, without planning your day in your head, just eating.
Honestly, it's actually uncomfortable.
Why do you think that is?
Because my brain wants input. It feels like wasted time. If I'm just chewing toast and staring at the wall, I feel like I'm losing productivity. I'm falling behind.
Exactly. The source argues that this efficiency mindset strips the meaning right out of the moment. A quiet breakfast in this context is an exercise in sensory grounding.
Sensory grounding, so just noticing things.
Right. It's noticing the texture of the bread, the light coming into the kitchen, the temperature of the coffee. It's a form of meditation, but without needing the yoga mat.
It's just being present with the toast.
Yes, and the text claims that these small moments, if you actually inhabit them, have a cumulative weight that is heavier than the big peaks.
That's a really bold claim, that a piece of toast is heavier than a trip to Paris.
In terms of shaping your neurobiology, yes, because you might go to Paris once in a decade.
But you eat breakfast every single morning.
Exactly. The text says, and I'll just quote the idea here, these moments may seem small, but they shape our lives. It's the difference between a flash flood and a river.
The flood is dramatic, but the river carves the canyon.
Beautifully put, yes. The flood makes the news, But the river actually shapes the landscape over time.
So it's about volume. It's the sheer number of ordinary moments.
It's about frequency. And the second example, the short walk, is very similar. Most of us walk to get somewhere. It's purely transportation.
Or we walk for fitness, closing the rings on our smartwatch.
Right, trying to hit 10,000 steps. But the source suggests walking just to witness the world.
Again, it comes back to that utility problem for me. I'm walking around the block just to look at a tree. I feel like I need a dog or a destination to justify it to anyone watching me.
Because we are obsessed with output. We want the walk to produce something. Better cardiovascular health or a completed errand.
We need a return on investment for our time.
Yes, but this text is arguing for non-transactional living, which brings us perfectly to the third example, a kind conversation.
Now, this one I feel like I do. I mean, I'm a nice person. I say please and thank you to the barista.
But is that kindness or is that politeness?
That's a good question.
Politeness is a social script. It's social lubrication to get through a transaction smoothly. Kindness, as the source defines it, requires a pause.
Yeah.
It requires actually seeing the other person, even if it's just for 10 seconds.
It's the difference between asking, how are you as a quick greeting, and asking, how are you as an actual question.
Exactly.
But that's a lot harder. That takes emotional bandwidth that a lot of us just don't have on a Wednesday morning.
It does, and that's why we avoid it. It's much easier to live on autopilot. But the core argument here is that a life lived entirely on autopilot, even if it's full of career success, feels empty because there is no texture to it.
You're just skimming the surface of your own life.
You're skimming.
So if we stop skimming and actually dive into these boring things, the walk, the breakfast, the quick chats, the text says we find steady and simple meaning. But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Steady sounds a lot like stagnant. We were wired for progress, right? We want the graph to go up and to the right. Doesn't this philosophy just lead to a flat line where we never achieve anything?
Well, flatline implies death or a complete lack of movement. The source argues that steady is actually the highest form of sustainability. Think about excitement for a minute.
Okay.
Excitement is a high cortisol, high adrenaline state. It's physically exhausting. You cannot be excited for 40 years straight. You would literally burn out.
That's true. The post-vacation crash is a very real biological thing.
Right. Excitement is volatile by nature. It spikes and it crashes. Steadiness, on the other hand, is a renewable resource.
So we undervalue it.
We heavily undervalue steadiness because it doesn't glitter, it's not Instagrammable, you can't post a picture of yourself feeling steady. But for long-term fulfillment, for actually enjoying the act of being alive rather than just the highlights, steadiness is superior because it's always available.
You don't have to wait for it.
You don't have to wait for a promotion to feel steady.
I really like that idea, that it's always available. You don't need a plane ticket for a quiet breakfast.
Yeah.
But let's get into the how, because even if I buy into this philosophically, my brain is still screaming for novelty. The source outlines a specific chain reaction for this, right? It's not just a matter of trying harder to be present.
No, it's not just willpower. Willpower fades. There is a logical progression here, a mechanism. It starts with attention, moves to repetition, then familiarity, and finally comfort.
A mechanics of comfort.
Exactly.
Let's break that chain down step by step, because I think the second link, repetition, is where a lot of people are going to check out. So step one is attention. We touched on this. Stopping the scroll. Noticing the coffee.
Right. You have to consciously turn the autopilot off. You have to signal to your brain, this moment matters. I am here.
Okay, simple enough in theory. But then we hit step two, which is repetition. The text explicitly says repetition creates familiarity. And usually we are told to break out of our routines. Variety is the spice of life, right?
That's the common wisdom, yes.
Right. Repetition feels like a prison to a lot of people. It feels like Groundhog Day. How on earth does the text frame repetition as a good thing?
This is really the crux of the whole argument. The text suggests we are looking at repetition completely wrong. In a chaotic world, and let's be honest, the world is chaotic and highly unpredictable, repetition isn't a prison, it's a structure.
A structure, like a scaffolding.
Yes. From a cognitive standpoint, your brain actually loves repetition.
Because it's predictable.
Because it's cheap. Energetically cheap. When you do something brand new, your brain is burning a massive amount of glucose trying to figure out the patterns. Is this safe? What are the rules here? What do I do next?
It's on high alert.
Exactly. When you repeat a routine, you drastically lower that cognitive load. You create a safety zone for your nervous system.
Okay, so repetition actually calms the nervous system down. It's not boring, it's soothing.
Precisely. And that leads directly to step 3, which is familiarity. Now, we often use the word familiarity to mean boredom, like, oh, I'm too familiar with this town, I need a change of scenery.
Right. Familiarity breeds contempt, as the saying goes.
But the source defines familiarity as a form of intimacy.
Intimacy with your own life. I love that phrasing.
Yes. Think about your home. You can walk down your hallway in the pitch black of night and know exactly where the door frame is, right? You don't have to think about it.
My body just knows the space.
Your body knows the space. That is familiarity. It's a deep bodily knowledge of your environment. You cannot buy that. You can buy a brand new $10 million house, but it won't be familiar on day one.
You have to earn the familiarity through the repetition of living in it.
You have to put the time in. And that deep familiarity leads to the final step in the chain, comfort. Familiarity creates comfort.
And I'm guessing we're not talking about the physical comfort of a soft chair here. We're talking about psychological safety.
We're talking about sanctuary. The text argues that you cannot feel truly at home in your life if you're constantly changing the variables.
If you're only seeking the next novel experience.
Right. If you are always seeking novelty, you never stay still long enough to build that familiarity, so you never actually reach that deep state of comfort. You're essentially living as a tourist in your own existence.
Wow, that is a heavy image. A tourist in your own existence. You're seeing the sights, you're taking the photos, but you don't actually live there.
And tourists eventually have to go home. The vacation ends. But if you haven't built a home, if you haven't put in the reps on the ordinary days to make them familiar, where do you go when the excitement fades?
You just crash.
You crash, and then you immediately start looking for the next trip to book, the next distraction.
So this whole framework is really an argument against the constant pivot, against the hustle culture idea that you should always be optimizing and changing and upgrading every aspect of your life.
Because every single time you upgrade or pivot, you reset the clock on familiarity.
You break the chain. You go right back to step 1.
And a lot of people spend their entire lives bouncing between step 1 and step 2, never staying long enough to reach the payoff of comfort.
This connects perfectly to the next big metaphor in the text, which I found incredibly helpful. The idea of the foundation.
Ah, yes, the structural argument.
The text says, quote, "A meaningful life is not built from rare events. It is built from consistent small experiences. And it calls the ordinary day the foundation of everything."
Right. Imagine you're building a house. The rare events, the promotions, the lavish parties, the big financial wins, those are the furniture. Maybe they're the expensive art you hang on the walls.
They're beautiful. They define the style of the house.
But the ordinary days, the quiet Tuesday mornings, the commute,
Yeah.
that is the concrete slab.
And nobody ever looks at the concrete slab. It's gray, it's boring, it's literally buried under the carpet. You don't invite people over to admire your slab.
But if the slab cracks, the entire house falls down. It does not matter how expensive that velvet sofa is. If your ordinary day is miserable, if you fundamentally hate your Tuesday, then your foundation is cracked.
And I think we see this a lot in what people call a midlife crisis.
Oh, absolutely. Let's unpack that. Because usually we think a midlife crisis happens because someone feels like they haven't achieved enough. They didn't get the sports car or the corner office by age 45.
Right, it's framed as a crisis of failure.
But very often it's the exact opposite. It's someone who did get all the furniture. They got the high-paying job, the money, the status, the nice cars, but they completely neglected the slab.
They spent 20 years grinding.
They spent 20 years ignoring the quiet breakfast, ignoring the walk, treating their daily routine as just an annoying obstacle they had to get through to reach the success.
And then they finally arrive at the success. They sit on the velvet sofa.
And they feel entirely empty because they have nowhere stable to stand. They have zero practice in just being alive on a normal day.
So the empty day, that day we all fear where absolutely nothing noteworthy happens, isn't actually empty at all. It's structural.
It is the load-bearing wall of your sanity. The source explicitly says, ordinary days are not empty. They are the foundation of everything. If you can learn to love the Tuesday, the peaks will take care of themselves.
But if you only live for the peaks, the valleys will destroy you.
Exactly. You won't have the resilience to survive the flat parts of life.
This really reframes the whole concept of FOMO for me, the fear of missing out. Because usually FOMO is about missing the party or missing the investment opportunity. But this philosophy suggests we should actually have a fear of missing the process.
Yes. We are terrified of having an average life. But the text argues that the average moments are where the actual living happens.
It's where connection happens.
It's where you watch your kids grow up. It's where you develop your taste in coffee. It's the actual texture of reality.
There's a specific line in the text that really stood out to me. Meaning is not always exciting. And I think that is the hardest sell for us as a society. We intrinsically equate meaning with high emotion. Tears, intense joy, burning passion.
That's the Hollywood effect. In movies, every single scene has to drive the plot forward. If nothing happens, they cut the scene in the editing room.
Right. If there's no conflict or big revelation, it hits the cutting room floor.
But life isn't a movie. Meaning in real life is often very quiet. It's a sense of coherence, a sense of, I belong here right now doing this mundane thing. That feeling doesn't scream, it hums.
You can't hear the hum if you're constantly looking for an explosion.
You'll miss it completely.
So, practically speaking, for the person listening to this right now, maybe they're stuck in traffic or they're folding laundry, doing the dishes, they're feeling that deep Wednesday boredom. The advice here isn't to go book a spontaneous trip to break the monotony.
No.
The advice is what? Dig in.
The advice is to stop treating the present moment as a waiting room. Stop waiting for the drive to be over so you can finally start your life. The drive is your life. The dishes are your life.
The source invites us to reinvest our attention into the mundane.
To treat the ordinary with the exact same respect and presence that we would treat the extraordinary.
It reminds me of that old Zen proverb. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The physical action doesn't change at all. The internal state changes.
And that internal state is where the meaning actually lives. It's not in the wood or the water. It's in the quality of attention you bring to the chopping and the carrying.
Before we wrap up, I want to look at where this leaves us in terms of our big life goals. Because we are a very goal-oriented society. We all have 5-year plans. And usually those plans involve escaping the routine.
Right, I want to retire early so I can sit on a beach all day.
Or I want to make enough money so I don't ever have to do these boring chores again. I'll outsource the mundane.
That is the great irony that the source highlights. We work incredibly hard, burning ourselves out, to escape the very things that, if we approach them differently, could actually give us the comfort and grounding we're desperately looking for.
We're basically trying to build a life where we never have to deal with a Tuesday again.
But you bring yourself with you wherever you go. If you haven't learned to find meaning in a quiet breakfast in your messy apartment kitchen, you probably won't find it in a quiet breakfast at a 5-star luxury resort.
You'd just be bored and anxious at a nicer resort.
Exactly. You can upgrade the setting, but you can't outsource the internal work.
That is the kicker. So if we accept the logic of this source, that ordinary days are the irreplaceable foundation, then the goal shouldn't be to escape the routine. The goal should be to dive deeper into it, to master the routine.
Master the routine, yes.
That sounds weirdly ambitious when you put it like that.
It is ambitious. It is much harder than chasing a promotion or a pay raise. It requires constant, low-level vigilance. It requires choosing to show up for your life when absolutely nothing exciting is happening to reward you for it.
So here's a provocative thought to leave everyone with as we close out this deep dive. We usually think the most important day of our life is the day we get married, or the day we finally retire, or the day we win the big award.
The day that ends up in the biography.
Right. But based on the logic of this text, I would argue that the most important day of your life is actually today, just a random Tuesday or Wednesday.
Because today is the day that is creating the familiarity.
Today's the day you are pouring the concrete for the foundation. And if you can't make today work, the big days don't matter because there's nothing for them to stand on.
The ordinary day isn't the obstacle standing in the way of your dream life. It is the destination.
It is the destination. I love that. That's definitely going to make me look at my to-do list a little differently this afternoon. It's not a list of chores. It's a list of, well, life.
It's the practice of living.
Well, on that note, I think I'm going to go have a very quiet, very deliberate cup of coffee. I hope this deep dive helps you, the listener, settle into your own flat lines just a little bit more comfortably today. Thanks for joining us.
See you in the routine.
We'll catch you next time.
You know, there is this very specific kind of panic.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not the kind where you're like being chased by a bear or hanging off a clone or something. It's much more subtle. And honestly, it's just much more pervasive.
Right.
It's 3:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. You look at your phone and you suddenly realize you have, I don't know, Unread messages on Slack, 3 missed calls, a WhatsApp group that is just blowing up, and an email inbox that, well, it seems to be reproducing asexually.
It creates that low-level hum, doesn't it? Just right in the back of your mind.
Exactly. It is that background radiation of anxiety, and it just whispers, you are forgetting something, and it is going to cost you.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
Because we live in this state where we have somehow convinced ourselves that a packed schedule it's a proxy for a successful life. We really treat the word busy as a synonym for worthy. Like if you aren't redlining the engine, you just aren't trying hard enough.
It has absolutely become the modern badge of honor.
Yeah.
I mean, you run into someone and ask, how are you? And the default answer is always, oh, so busy, crazy busy.
Busy.
Always.
Right. And we say it like a complaint, but let's be honest. We kind of wear it like a medal. It signals demand. It signals importance.
But today, we are going to flip that entire narrative on its head.
Uh-huh.
We are doing a deep dive into a text titled, How to Create a Life That Feels Calm, Not Busy. And before you roll your eyes and think this is some, fluff piece or a guide to meditation retreats.
Which it is not.
No, stick with me here.
Yeah.
This is actually a highly tactical, almost aggressive guide to deconstructing productivity culture.
Yeah.
It is not about checking out at all. It's about the mechanics of designing a steady life.
It really is. And, what struck me immediately about this source material is that it doesn't just say slow down or take a bubble bath.
Right.
It argues that our fundamental definition of productivity is totally broken. It opens with this premise that creates immediate tension. It says, many people confuse busyness with importance. That is the hook right there. And honestly, reading it, I felt a little attacked.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Because if I'm being totally honest with you and with myself, when my calendar is full of color-coded blocks, I feel important. I feel needed. And the text is basically saying that feeling is a lie.
It's a dopamine trap. The source actually argues that this constant activity, what we affectionately call the grind, is often just a masking agent. It says constant activity hides stress and exhaustion. Think about the implications of that for a second.
Yeah.
We aren't busy because we have to be. We're busy because stopping forces us to feel how tired we actually are.
Wow. That's a heavy realization to start with.
Yeah.
We are using tasks as a shield to protect us from our own fatigue. So if that is the problem, that we're addicted to the rush, what's the solution? The mission for this deep dive is to map out the transition from a life that feels rushed to a life that feels steady. And steady is a very specific word choice by the author that I really want to dig into.
It is. Steady implies momentum, but controlled momentum.
Yeah.
It's the difference between, say, falling down a hill and walking down it.
Right.
And to get there, we really have to talk about what the text calls the illusion of productivity.
The hamster wheel.
The hamster wheel is the perfect analogy here. Just picture it. You're sweating, your legs are pumping, the mechanism is spinning wildly, there's noise, there's motion.
But geographically.
You haven't moved an inch. Exactly. The text points out that a full schedule feels productive because it's loud, it demands your attention. But checking off 15 low-value emails is just not the same as doing 1 hour of deep strategic thinking.
It is the difference between motion and action. But here's the pushback I think a lot of listeners might have.
Okay.
I certainly had it. When I hear the word calm, I panic a little bit. I picture an empty room. I picture boredom. I picture looking at a white wall and wondering what to do with my hands,
Right.
I like doing things. I don't want an empty life.
And the source anticipates that exact fear. It makes a critical distinction that I think is really the aha moment for this whole section. It says, a calm life is not empty. It is intentional.
Intentional. Okay, let's unpack that difference because intentional can sound a bit like a buzzword. What does it actually mean in this context?
Think of empty as a void. Think of intentional as a curated space. Let me give you an analogy.
Sure.
Think of a warehouse versus a museum. A warehouse is full. It is packed floor to ceiling with boxes, crates, just random items. It's cluttered. You can't find anything. You can't appreciate anything. It's just stuff.
Okay. I am actively visualizing my garage right now.
Exactly. Now think of a museum. A museum has a lot of empty space.
Right. The white walls.
White walls, carefully placed lighting.
Yeah.
And why? So you can actually see the art. The calm this text advocates for is about removing the clutter, the warehouse vibe, so you can see the art of your life. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right things with higher fidelity.
I really love that warehouse versus museum analogy. So we are trying to curate the museum, but how do we decide what goes on the wall and what stays in the crate? The text gives us a specific diagnostic tool for this, and it's not just your standard pro-con list.
It starts with clarity. You
Yeah.
can't curate if you don't know what the theme of the museum is. The text asks, what truly matters?
Yeah.
Which, yes, sounds like a standard self-help question, but then it pivots to the metric that really matters, which is the energy audit.
Yes. This was the part that literally changed my week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because usually when I plan my schedule, I do a time audit, I look at the clock and think, do I have enough hours between 2 and 4 p.m.? But the source says to ask which activities bring energy and which remove it.
This is a fundamental shift in physics for your schedule. We tend to treat time as the only finite resource, but energy is arguably way more scarce and way more valuable. You can have 3 free hours in the afternoon. On paper, you are free.
Yeah.
But if you just came out of a toxic, argument-heavy 2-hour meeting that drained your soul, those 3 free hours are functionally useless.
You're a zombie.
You're a zombie, exactly.
Totally. I call it the hangover effect. A
Yeah.
bad task hangs over the next 3 hours. You're sitting there staring at the screen, but the lights are off upstairs.
Right. So the source suggests we need to categorize our commitments not by how long they take, but by what they cost us, biologically and emotionally.
Let's actually try this right now. If you're listening, I want you to mentally scan your last 48 hours. Don't look at the clock. Look at your mood.
That's a great exercise.
That coffee with a mentor or an old friend, that probably added energy. You left buzzing. You were full of ideas. But that weekly status update where everyone reads off a slide deck in a monotone voice?
Oh, the worst.
Right. That is an energy vampire. It costs you so much more than just the 30 minutes on the calendar.
And here is where it gets tricky, and the text explicitly warns us about this. Some things masquerade as energy givers, but are actually removers.
Social media.
What about scrolling social media, right?
Oh, that is the biggest trap. I think, I'm just relaxing for 10 minutes. I deserve a break.
Yeah.
But I emerge from the scroll hole feeling completely scattered, jealous, and tired. It is like eating junk food for the brain.
Because it is high input. It isn't rest. It is stimulation. So the energy audit requires you to be brutally honest about the after effect of an activity, not just the activity itself. How do you feel 10 minutes after you put the phone down?
Okay, so step 1 is the audit. We identify the vampires. We see what is draining us. Now comes the hard part. The text tells us to reduce unnecessary commitments, which sounds lovely, but in practice that means saying no. And saying no is terrifying for most of us.
It is terrifying because of FOMO, the fear of missing out, or fold, the fear of letting down. But the text frames the reward for this reduction beautifully. It says reducing commitments creates space. And specifically, it uses the phrase breathing room.
Breathing room. It's such a physical description. It really implies that right now we are suffocating.
We really are. Think about the modern workday. It is hypoxic. We are holding our breath. Meeting ends at 9:59. Next one starts at 10:00.
Yep.
We eat lunch while typing emails with one hand. We listen to podcasts at 2 times speed to optimize our learning. There's literally no oxygen in the system.
And when you don't have oxygen, your brain goes into survival mode. You cannot think strategically when you are gasping for air.
Precisely. This connects back to clarity. You cannot answer the question, what truly matters, if you are suffocating. The space the author talks about isn't a luxury. It is a functional requirement for intelligence. If you are packed back-to-back, you are operating on reflex, not intention. You are just swatting away tennis balls as they fly at your face.
You aren't playing the game is playing you. So space is actually a strategic advantage. It allows you to see the ball coming, but to get that space, we really have to confront our own ego. And this is where the text drops a hammer that I think we all need to hear. It says, it also helps to accept limits. No one can do everything.
That is the pill that is hardest to swallow. No one can do everything.
It feels like a direct challenge, doesn't it? My immediate reaction is always, well, maybe you can't, but I'm built different. I can multitask. I can hustle.
Right. I'll just sleep less. I'll drink more espresso.
Exactly.
But the text frames this limit not as a weakness, but as a boundary condition of reality. It's physics. It says, choosing carefully protects mental energy.
I really love that phrase, protects mental energy. It turns you from a victim into a guardian.
Yes. Think of your mental energy like a bank vault.
Oh.
If you leave the door open, meaning you say yes to everything, you agree to every meeting, you engage in every single argument, anyone can walk in and take it. Your neighbor's drama, a random request from a coworker, a Twitter feud, they all loot the vault.
That's such a good way to picture it.
Accepting limits is essentially closing the vault door and putting a guard out front. You were saying, I have limited currency, so I am going to be extremely picky about what I spend it on.
That reframes saying no from being rude to being responsible. You are protecting the asset, and the asset is you.
Exactly. If you spend your energy on things that don't matter, you have nothing left for the things that do. It's basic economics. You cannot be infinite in a finite world.
So we've got the mindset down. Intentionality, the energy audit, and accepting limits. Now I want to get into the how. The actual lifestyle design. The source outlines what it calls the 3 pillars of a calm life. And looking at these, they seem pretty simple on the surface, but I have a feeling they are deceptively hard to execute in the real world.
They're very simple concepts, but they are radical practices today.
Let's hit pillar 1, rest without guilt.
Without guilt. That is the modifier that changes everything.
Why is this so impossible? If I sit on the couch on a Saturday afternoon for 20 minutes just staring out the window, my brain starts screaming at me. You should be cleaning the gutters. You should be learning a language. You should be optimizing something. It's like I have a little drill sergeant in my head.
That is the internalization of the busyness equals importance equation we started with. If you aren't producing, you feel you have no value. The guilt is your brain trying to force you back into worthy status. The source argues that we have to view rest not as a failure of work, but as the fuel for work.
So rest is functional. It's like charging the battery. You don't feel guilty when your phone is plugged in.
No, you don't.
You don't yell at your phone for being lazy. You know it needs to happen for the phone to work.
Right. But we treat ourselves worse than our phones. We try to run on 1% battery all day and wonder why we're glitching. Rest without guilt means consciously telling that voice in your head, I am not being lazy, I am entering a recovery cycle.
I need to tattoo that on my forehead. I am entering a recovery cycle. Okay, pillar 2. This one is vital because we all have bills to pay. Work with boundaries.
I appreciate that the text includes this. It doesn't say move to a cabin in the woods and weave baskets. It says work.
Right.
But the boundaries part, that is where the leakage happens.
The leakage. That is the perfect word. Work used to be a place you went to. You clocked in, you clocked out. Now it's a cloud that follows you. It's in your pocket. It's on your nightstand. It's at the dinner table.
And that leakage destroys the breathing room we talked about. If you are checking emails at 9:00 p.m., your brain never actually disengages. You remain in a state of low-grade vigilance. You're like a soldier sleeping with one eye open. You aren't really resting.
Yeah.
The boundary isn't just about time. It's about cognitive closure.
Yeah.
You need to be able to say, the shop is closed.
The shop is closed. I like that. Even if you love your job. Maybe especially if you love your job, because that is so much harder to turn off.
Absolutely. Passion can be just as exhausting as drudgery if it has no off switch. The boundary protects the passion. Actually, it prevents burnout.
Okay, pillar 3. This is the one that I think listeners are going to struggle with the most. I struggled with it just reading it. Time without stimulation.
This is the frontier. We are currently living in the age of hyperstimulation.
The text was talking about silence, right? Not just quiet, but input silence.
Yes. Time without stimulation means no inputs, no podcast, no music, no Netflix, no book, no conversation, just you and your own brain.
That sounds absolutely terrifying.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
Pascal famously said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. When we remove stimulation, 2 things happen. First, we get bored, and we hate boredom.
We do.
But second, and more importantly, the sediment settles.
The sediment.
Imagine a glass of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, that's stimulation, that's information, that's content. It stays cloudy. You can't see through it. But if you put the glass down and don't touch it for 20 minutes, the mud settles to the bottom and the water becomes clear. That is your mind. Constant podcasts and scrolling keep the water muddy. You need unstimulated time for the mud to settle so you can actually have that clarity we talked about earlier.
Wow. So when I am constantly listening to things, even educational things like this deep dive, I am keeping the water muddy.
You are. You're processing external thoughts, not generating internal ones. You cannot have an original insight if you are constantly consuming someone else's insights. The source is saying that to feel steady, you need periods where the input is 0.
So practically, this could be walking the dog without headphones.
Exactly. Driving the car without the radio, washing dishes in silence.
That's tough.
It feels weird at first. You will reach for your phone phantomling style. You'll feel that itch. But after about 10 minutes, your brain sighs. It realizes it doesn't have to process data anymore. That is where the calm lives.
It's almost like an information detox. We are information obese and we need to fast.
That is a perfect analogy. We are gluttons for information. Time without stimulation is intermittent fasting for the brain.
So let's review. We have the 3 pillars: rest without guilt, work with boundaries, time without stimulation. Now, looking at this list, it feels like a lot to change. And the text offers a warning here that I think is really important for setting expectations. It says, calm is not found by accident.
That is the bold print warning label. Calm is not found by accident.
It implies that the default setting of our world is chaos.
It is. The gravity of modern life pulls you toward rushed. The economy is designed to make you rushed. The technology is designed to make you rushed. Every app on your phone is engineered by 1,000 PhDs to steal your attention.
Yeah, you're up against an army.
If you just go with the flow, you will end up stressed, busy, and exhausted. That is the destination of the river.
So to get to steady, you have to swim upstream. You have to be countercultural.
You have to build it. The text says it is created through small daily decisions. It's not one big retreat once a year. It's a construction project.
I really like small daily decisions because that makes it accessible. It's not quit your job today. It's don't check email before breakfast today.
It's micro-resistance. It's deciding, I'm going to leave this slot in my calendar empty. Or I am going to say no to that happy hour because I'm tired. It is the cumulative effect of these tiny choices that builds the wall against the chaos.
And the text paints a picture of what happens when you stack these bricks. It says, over time, these decisions build a life that feels steady instead of rushed.
I want to pause on those 2 words again. Rushed versus steady.
It's a visceral difference. Rushed feels like you are tipping forward, always about to fall. You're brittle.
Yes.
One bad email ruins your day. You snap at your partner because you're running late.
Steady implies a low center of gravity. You are grounded. Yeah. The bad email comes in, and you see it, but you don't topple over. You have the breathing room to process it. You have the mental energy in the bank to pay for the stress without going bankrupt.
That is the goal. Not a life without problems, that's impossible, but a life where you are steady enough to handle the problems. A life where you aren't constantly redlining.
Resilience. That's what calm actually is. It's not passivity, it's resilience.
So let's bring this all the way back to the beginning for the listener. We started with the trap, confusing busyness with importance.
We realize that the busy life is often an empty life, full of motion, but lacking direction.
We learned to use the energy audit, chasing energy, not just time. We talked about creating breathing room by ruthlessly cutting the unnecessary, not because we are lazy, but because we literally need oxygen.
We accepted the hard truth that no one can do everything, and that saying no is actually a way of protecting your mental vault.
And we broke down the 3 pillars: rest without guilt, work with boundaries, and the big one, time without stimulation.
And finally, we acknowledged that this is an active fight. You don't stumble into calm. You have to design it.
So here is the challenge for you listening right now. You don't have to change your whole life by tomorrow morning. That is just another form of rushing.
Exactly.
Just pick one brick. Maybe tonight, you leave the phone in the kitchen when you go to bed. Maybe tomorrow, you take a 10-minute walk with no headphones.
Just one small reclamation of your attention. Start there.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought that really stuck with me from the source's logic. We said, calm isn't accidental. It has to be chosen. But that logic has a flip side that is kind of haunting.
It does. It's the shadow side of the argument.
If calm is not found by accident, then a rushed, chaotic life is the default result of not making decisions. It is what happens when you take your hands off the wheel.
Right.
So the question we want to leave you with is this. If you aren't the one choosing what brings you energy and what fills your time, who or what is choosing for you?
If you don't fill your calendar, someone else will fill it for you.
Exactly. Take control of the pen. Write your own schedule. Thanks for diving in with us today.
Here's to a steady life.
Catch you next time.